yeah, life gets really hard and there are struggles and things that feel literally unsurvivable, but God was with me the whole time. When I was around 7 years old, my parents lost their jobs. They had been prescribed painkillers by a doctor before that to treat chronic pain, and when they lost their insurance, they no longer had access to that. So they began buying medicine off the street, which then quickly turned into a heroin addiction. A CPS would constantly show up to the house, but we did remain in their custody. My parents' addiction got worse and worse, and at that point, we had lost our house that we had on the coast. One day when I was 11, what I thought was just a gut feeling, and now I realize is a calling from God, but that my brother and I had to get out of there. So I packed a suitcase for my brother and I called my grandma and I just said, I don't want to live here anymore and I don't want to be here. My grandma said, you're not going to see your kids again unless you get clean. And the next day, my mom checked into rehab, and I thank God for that every single day because she's just a whole different person, and she's over 13 years clean now. By the time I was 18, a lot of that trauma had caught up with me. Survival mode kind of kicked off, and I didn't really know how to deal with that. My early 20s, I spent partying a lot. I never picked up drugs because of my parents, but I was definitely drinking, and at that point, I did not have any sort of faith in my life. So I was not going to church. And so there was just a hole in my life. I had a friend who lived here in Texas. She kind of threw out the idea of we should visit. And I said, yeah, let's do it. And I loved it here. And I was like, I think I could live here. We went back to Oregon after that trip and we packed up all of our stuff. And probably about 2 weeks into being here, I hit the worst depression I've ever had in my life. I actually even told my mom, if this is how I'm gonna feel for the rest of my life, I don't know that my life is worth living. Maddie and Kenzie had been going to the young adults group at the North Lake campus for a while at that point. And they always invited me and I always made excuses not to go. One Thursday night they were going. And so I went with them and I walked into the church, and the minute that I walked in, I just felt this overwhelming sense of peace and calmness that I hadn't felt in maybe my entire life. I had this community that I didn't have before, and it just really resonated with me. And I was like, maybe this is somewhere that I need to be, and maybe this feeling that I'm having is God calling me to keep coming back. I never stopped going. I just kept going to young adults and to church on Sunday, and then I started going to other events. I heard about Bed Build, just hearing about what the church wants to do and does do for kids that are in very similar situations to what I grew up in. That was really important to me. I've made so many friends and had such a good community around me, and it's completely changed my life and my perspective on life. And then obviously my relationship with God and Jesus has just strengthened so much. After spending a lot of time in church and a lot of time in my Bible, I just knew that God was telling me that I needed to share my story and that there were other people that needed to hear it as bad as I needed to hear the messages that he was giving me. I walked into young adults. I just sat in that chair and I got that calm feeling again, and I knew God was right there with me, speaking through me, and I told my story. I wanted everybody to know that yeah, life gets really hard and there are struggles and things that feel literally unsurvivable, whether that's your mental health or your physical health. But God was with me the whole time and lead me to the people that I've met and the church that I go to every Sunday, and it's literally saved my life.